welcome back. Basically, what we're going to do today is we are going to go through the 2021 VCE Media Exam, specifically just the agency and control section. We're going to start with question 9. So, someone read it out for me. What is question 9? What does it ask us to do?
Describe how media is used by individuals in the contemporary media landscape.
Alright, so if we're looking at a task words, describe, what do we need to do?
Describe.
Describe, yes. But what does describe mean, specifically?
Go into detail.
Go into detail, yeah. So, this is only a 3-mark question, just to remind you. So, it's not asking for too much detail. But, what are the main things we have to have in our answer? So, you have your 3 marks. So, 1 mark is for
describing.
Describe, yep.
The second mark is for like media
individual.
Media individual, like how the media
Yep.
is used by the individual. Which I mean,
I'm going to point the camera to one person. This one.
And then what's your other mark?
contemporary media, like how like the
With the media landscape.
yeah, so landscape. So current media landscape.
Yeah. So this is someone who got full marks. Read the first sentence. Individuals are able to capitalize on the media to produce and distribute their own content and influence others. First sentence. What do we notice about it?
It basically, does it reword the question?
It almost rewords the question, but they're basically identifying exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So they are in its most basic form describing how individuals use media in the current media landscape. How do they do it? By producing and distributing their own content and influencing others. So already they're showing exactly what they want to talk about. Their second sentence, if we go into that, the emergence of contemporary technologies like social media have granted individuals agency to be content creators as well as consumers. So that second sentence is just an extension of the first sentence.
Yeah.
They've described it a little bit further. Keeping it though pretty simple.
Haven't they kind of gone into like the media individual there though? Because they're talking about social media
Yeah.
influences.
And that's the point of the question. The question says describe how media is used by the individuals.
Yeah.
So,
Addressing.
yeah, so they're basically, exactly, addressing. So they're addressing how it's used. They then, to further describe, they provide an example. In this case, talk about TikTok. For example, TikTok, a social media network designed for the sharing of videos, has enabled its 1.1 billion users to raise awareness of environmental issues. So, in this, they've been very specific about the example. They've identified the social media, but then they've given a specific example to support the answer. In this case, it's the environmental issues. This is a good example of a question like I was saying before. Every sentence here has a purpose. Their first sentence, if we're thinking about the described scenario or the described question, their first sentence explains it's their topic sentence basically. If we're going to think of it like English, it's their topic sentence. They've addressed exactly what they're going to do. Their second sentence is just an extension of that, or their explanation. Same with their third sentence, their explanation. They're giving their example. Following that, they have their evidence. We're thinking of a teal structure here. They've got their evidence talking about Morgan Cook, who's an influencer about sustainable living. Their final sentence links it back. They garnered over 600,000 views, testifies the individual's newfound agency to use media to influence others. So that could be one, like if you're thinking about how you want to structure it, you can use the teal structure in like its simplest form. Keeping it simple, cutting it, like taking it back to basics. So even if you wanted to do like just 1 or 2 sentences for each. So I want to give you a shot at answering this using any kind of examples that we've used in the class. So I don't have a list of that somewhere, but or just you can use one of your own examples that you're aware of. You can use some of the other questions we've done. We've spoken about Facebook as well, so you can do or just like Google, Instagram, TikTok. If you want to talk about social media.
Yeah, how am I supposed to start? I would have done it because I would have started with individual. I would have started with the same thing.
Well, see, here's the thing.
Now I'm gonna do something different.
What? No, you don't have to.
Oh.
Can I copy that?
You can, if you want. Here, this, it's almost like if you're trying to remember quotes for your English essays. This is like the same kind of thing. What these reports here are basically to help guide you into how you should answer the question. As long as you are showing your knowledge and you're able to use correct media language. So if we're thinking about media language, they've used words like produce and distribute, even words just like influence, just like basic words. This is, they're using correct media terminology, which they're obviously going to be aware of. If you're using the correct terminology, that'll help you get maybe those 1 or 2 extra marks.
If we use like TikTok for example, do we have to use an Australian TikTok?
No.
Okay.
The only times because it's the contemporary media landscape, that can be on any scale. That can be local, global, national. The only times you have to refer to Australian media is if the question specifically asks for like this, like about government issues or any kind of legal issues.
Yeah.
You'd want to focus on Australia. If you need to compare, you can maybe, like, I'm just going to use this as an example. Every country will have their own kind of laws when it comes to regulation. So when it comes to social media, it's difficult for, there might be certain things that are allowed in Australia but are not allowed in the US, or vice versa. I'm going to use this as an example. It's quite an old example, but it's the Pokemon anime. There was an episode in one of the early seasons where they had a gun.
Really?
In Japan, that was aired. But due to like censorship laws in the US, that episode was banned. So it was never aired on American TV when it was dubbed from the Japanese voice actors to the American voice actors. It exists out there, but it's just it wasn't legal to air on US television. Alright, so do we have an example? We'll just do one example.
Individuals are able to create content to influence others. Contemporary technologies such as social media has granted individuals agency to be content creators and consumers. For example, YouTube, a network where individuals are able to watch and share content, has been used to raise awareness for the environment. Mr. Beast, a content creator with over 100 million subscribers, has been able to use the network to launch his own charities, such as Team Trees or Team Seas. This use of the network shows the agency users have been given to influence others.
That's very good. So you're right. It is similar, but that's fine. And you've used something like that's still very present. Like Mr. Beast is the face of YouTube currently. And I forgot about Team Trees and Team Seas.
That's T-Series.
Sorry?
That's T-Series.
Well, okay.
Actually,
Okay, I'm going to rephrase that. Mr. Beast is the face of YouTube in the Western world. In the Asian world, it is T-Series.
Within the current day media landscape, media is used by individuals to produce and push a specific agenda. This can be seen through YouTube, a social media network designed for sharing videos. Has enabled its 2.7 billion users, more specifically content creators, to push a specific agenda onto the audience. Mr. Beast, a YouTube influencer, has used the contemporary media landscape and that's basically all I have.
Yeah.
I was gonna go with he established a bunch of charities.
Yeah, that's great.
Help people.
Yeah. So, but both of those are very good answers using a very good contemporary example. Any questions?
Well, actually, it says just grab how media is used by individuals, and the sample answer said produce and distribute. Would you ever say to consume?
Yes.
Okay.
You could use consume.
So if I was to talk about distribute, I didn't, but if I was
Yeah. So in this case, they have spoken specifically about how people have produced, but you can also talk about how you consume. So like, for example, if I wanted to talk about individuals consuming media, I could say how in the contemporary media landscape, individuals consume news through social media. For example, there are lots of media outlets that are using Instagram and TikTok to distribute media for Gen Z and millennials to consume. That's how I consume most of my media. I look at Daily Oz on Instagram. My TikTok feed sometimes has like The Guardian or things like that. That's how I get my news.
with the example response and also the responses from the other guys, they all reference the influence, like influencing people and using the platform to influence, but the question doesn't say anything about it. Does that mean that you don't have to specifically talk about influencing?
No, you don't. It doesn't specify about influencing, but it's just the way that they've answered the questions. They've looked at how people are influenced by social media. So you don't have to necessarily talk about that. Like just the example that I just used again. I didn't talk about how as a consumer, I'm being influenced. I'm just saying, I just said as a consumer, I'm consuming news in a different way. It's evolved. So, a good question. I want to jump to question 11. So we have 4 marks for this one. So, and it's another describable. So, it asks us to describe one ethical issue related to the production and/or distribution of media products.
False media.
Misinformation.
Essentially what I said.
All right, so that could be an example that we can look at, and if we wanted to, we've got our case study about the Australian bushfires back in 2020 with Sky News and everything. So, we've got our 4 marks. We've got our, obviously, describe, making sure we're understanding that keyword. How do we get our other marks?
Ethical issue, so if you state the ethical issue, you get 1 as well. So you have to describe it,
Yep.
and you have to state it. That's
Yep.
2 marks. And then you have to relate it to the production
Yep.
and distribution of media.
People aren't told.
Also,
So production / distribution, and then you do media products for the last
We
one.
do that too.
That'd be your example.
So, the thing with that, I'm just going to say that the media products, that comes under your production and distribution, because it's the production and distribution of media products. So this is something I want to highlight, and you can see it at the top here. Although this question directed students to concentration on ethical issues, it was still appropriate for them to include legal issues in their responses, as laws can be influenced by ethical debates. I just want to make note about this. For each question, it gives a description of basically what they were looking for and what students did, and this can also inform you as to why they didn't get the full mark. This person has gone straight into it. So an ethical issue is the use of Photoshop and other editing photos in social media posts. Boom. They've explained straight away what they're going to be talking about. The ethical issue is Photoshop in social media posts. For example, Instagram is full of content posted by individuals, particularly influencers, who can share their content to a wide range of people. They've kind of already, I guess, touched the surface about the production and distribution. If content is constantly edited, e.g. to make a person seem thinner, more muscles, clear skin, it can affect the body image of audiences, particularly young girls, who cannot achieve the unrealistic and unachievable standard of beauty portrayed by these edited posts. So right there, they have gone deeper into what the ethical issue is. This can be seen as an ethical issue because content creators are not required to state whether a picture or video is edited. So unrealistic standards of beauty are created, which can go on to cause body image issues in some audiences and moreover, eating disorders. This last sentence is like the explanation of the ethical issue. They've mentioned it, they've discussed it, they've gone into detail, but then they've explained it. So that's part of your describe, part of your example. That would be the full marks. Does anyone want to share their answer?
One ethical issue related to the distribution of media products is the misrepresentation and online slang that people perpetrate on others. This usually occurs between 2 individuals or influencers online, but can also be related to a generalized group of people. One example of this is the gym culture seen on social media platforms like TikTok, where men are unfairly slandered and labeled gym creeps while being recorded without their consent. This can be considered morally questionable as the context is usually omitted from the clips, and even when it isn't, the clips often spark controversy about whether the man's actions can really be considered creepy.